What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Table Setters covering all things Major League Baseball. As always, I'm Steve, joined with my tag partner, Devin. What's going on, man?
What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 113. We are here tonight to fill the baseball void for those of you that are joining us live, and for those of you listening to us in the morning, Monday morning, we are here to help kind of review what we've seen so far in the World Series, as well as preview what's still left to come. So welcome to the show. Glad to have you here.
Yeah, we're here live again. So if you guys are here watching on Twitter or on YouTube, please hop in the chat. Let us know what you think about the first two games of the World Series, as both teams are on a jet to Los Angeles, getting ready for a game three that will be pivotal on Monday night. We have the pitching matchups. We have all the conversation about game 3 and 4. But of course, we have to talk about the games that were, and they were very eventful. And you and I made our predictions last episode, a World Series preview. All the pundits out there talking about this series. And what you want from a World Series and the biggest stage that baseball offers is moments. And I think both of these games, before we get into the minutia of each one of them, gave us moments to remember.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, the whole title to this World Series going into it from analysts and from people like ourselves was, this is strength versus strength. I mean, A-Rod came out right away when the matchup was official, saying this is not David versus Goliath. This is Goliath versus Goliath. And I think we agreed. Their strengths match up against each other in such a way where you're just, all right, which one is giving tonight? We've said it a few times. Which one's going to give? And we saw two completely different stories in game 1 and game 2, which is, to me, as a baseball fan who does not necessarily have a rooting interest. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm underdog all the way here, but like, my team's not in it. I'm just glad as a baseball fan to have, I don't know, the dichotomy of these two teams going at it and seeing game 1 and game 2 completely different feel. And I'm hoping for more of it.
Yeah, and I want to get lost in the recency bias, but there definitely feels like there is a palpable buzz around baseball right now, similar to, last year's World Series. Maybe they're building on the momentum. Maybe the common denominator is the Los Angeles Dodgers, the big bad Death Star that they are developing, the heel everyone wants to watch and root against. But there feels to be the whole ecosystem of the sports world, even on a football Sunday, everyone's talking about the World Series. Everyone is discussing the Yamamoto complete game. Everyone is discussing the pinch hit grand slam from Addison Barger. There's so much on the table, and we're only 2 games in, and hopefully we have another 5 to preview and discuss, because we have the potential to have a really, really memorable World Series. Whereas, some World Series in the past don't capture the imagination of the casual fan and the diehards. I think this is the perfect blend of both. And let's be honest, I think Toronto plays a big part of this. Both of these teams, of course, have passionate fan bases, but this is a franchise in the Toronto Blue Jays that haven't been in the World Series since 1993. They've had a lot of moments, they have a lot of good baseball to root for, but this is a country, not just a city or a state, starving for championship baseball, and they're really embracing this Blue Jay team.
Yeah, as they should. I mean, what is there that makes it hard to embrace? A group of guys that have fun playing the game, seem to play the game the right way. There's a little bit of old school. And then we had the story about Addison Barger comes out after he hits that pinch hit grand slam, the first ever in World Series history, that he had been sleeping on the couch of a teammate, I believe Davis Schneider. It's so, like, it's stories like that. Like, how can you not love these dudes? But the Dodgers, man, it didn't take them long to punch back here, and I don't think anyone should be surprised by that. A lot of reactions on Twitter, social media. It just kind of, whichever way the wind is blowing. So after game 1, we had a lot of people like, oh my goodness, like the Blue Jays are going to take these guys down a peg. And then the Dodgers win game 2, and you have more people come out and say, this series is over now. Dodgers are going to take it the rest of the way. Like I said, I am hoping for more back and forth, and I truly believe that's what we're going to get. The Blue Jays, this is not new necessarily, seeing them look pretty bad at the plate for a game or two. We saw this in the Seattle series in the first 2 games. One of those first 2 games, Toronto only managed 2 hits the entire game. And I know that for a fact, because last night when they were only at 4 hits, I thought to myself, man, when is the last time the Blue Jays were held to 4 hits? And I thought I was going to have to scroll back a while in the game log to find it. No, it was the beginning of that Seattle series not all that long ago. And I think that proves that all because they get shut down one game does not necessarily mean they have gone into a complete funk. All right. You can't tell me you watch game 1 and game 2 and think just because of game 2 that they're finished. Yoshinobu Yamamoto was just absolutely fantastic. He has been in a groove for a long, long time here. I know the Phillies touched him up in that one game, but especially on the road, Yamamoto has been nearly untouchable. 2 complete games in a row. A lot of first since that we saw last night. So he is the first complete game in a World Series since Johnny Cueto in 2015 in Game 2 against my Mets, Royals Mets. He is the first to have back-to-back complete games in a postseason since Kurt Schilling in 2001. And there's another stat out there, and it's something along the lines of first to have 2 complete games, or actually only the second person ever to have 2 complete games in a row in the postseason that featured, I believe, at least 7 strikeouts and 4 hits or less in both of them, something along those lines. The only other guy to do it was Sandy Koufax in 1965. You can go to our Instagram and check that one. I have it written right in there, but if it's not exactly what I just said, it's very close. So Yamamoto, man, he's making some history out there. So I don't necessarily think we have to come on here and punch down on the Blue Jays saying how bad they were. I think it was more about the greatness that we saw from the Los Angeles Dodgers $325 million man last night.
Yeah, and you also mentioned the history you made, the first back-to-back complete game in postseason history since Kurt Schilling, but first since Oral Hershiser did it for in the Dodgers franchise history since 1988. So this is rare air, and it's also, I saw some pundits, of course, the day off of baseball. There's a lot of conversation trying to fill the gap and getting people to click and stay engaged with the game. People are talking about maybe this changes the mindset of front offices to prioritize starting pitching again. And I would push back on this. I think there's always been priority on starting pitching, and you're looking for the best arms in baseball. And I'm not saying any manager doesn't want their starter to go 9 innings. It's a rare thing. Yamamoto right now is doing something we don't see in modern baseball. So we have to appreciate it in real time. And it's not like he was dominant all year. He was great. I mean, he's probably the runner up of the Cy Young. He's going to get some votes. Paul Skeens has the nod, in my opinion, but he's been great. He saved his best baseball for the postseason, it seems. And that's the best part for the Dodgers, that they have this guy that you mentioned paying $325 million. The Dodgers weren't the only team that wanted him. Of course, everyone was in on him. Everyone kind of expected him to be as good, but he's been as advertised and composed under pressure. In his first year, we mentioned some of the blips on the radar. Can he adjust to baseball? And we've seen other international signings, whether it be a pitcher or a position player, have a difficulty adjusting, and then eventually they find their groove. And Yamamoto didn't need much time. And now we're seeing him at the top of his game. I'd be shocked. I mean, it's for him. He's living in the Paul Skeens era. I'd be shocked unless Paul Skeens finds his way to the American League sometime soon. He has to get a National League Cy Young under his belt. That's the kind of baseball we're watching him. And he's doing it like right now in the postseason is as important as it ever could be for a Dodger team that desperately does not want to dive back in that bullpen. They saved a lot of arms, and we'll talk about the storylines of Game 1 and Game 2. Yamamoto was a savior for them because that bullpen is hurting, and they don't want to go out there and pitch meaningful innings. They gave him a break in Game 2.
Yeah, Game 1, I mean, we were all excited. I know I was giddy to see Dave Roberts have to make some tough decisions and take Blake Snell out in the 6th inning, which we didn't predict, but we said this is the recipe for the Blue Jays. They have to work Blake Snell. Blake Snell's going to be really good. You're probably not going to score a ton of runs off him, but if you can get him out sometime around the 6th inning and make bullpen guys have to come out for the Dodgers, Blue Jays have a really good chance. And that is exactly what happened. Blake Snell had good stuff, man. He was making good pitches. The Blue Jays were fouling off a lot of 2-strike pitches and just a fantastic approach up there. You could see Snell looked frustrated at times. I didn't think he pitched poorly. And I won't even say, old Blake Snell came out like walking guys all over. It was just the Blue Jays, man. They were just on their game, and then they absolutely punished some of the mistakes of the bullpen. But like you said, the Yamamoto complete game is absolutely huge because even with the Game 1 bullpen usage, the Dodgers have not yet had to show their best bullpen guys to the Blue Jays at this point. Roki Sasaki has not made an appearance, so he is still going to be brand new to the Blue Jays whenever he gets on the mound there. Even Blake Trinan, who I know has had a lot of downs this year and not as many ups, you still have to consider him one of the biggest weapons or one of their best relief pitchers. Last year in the postseason, he was fantastic. They haven't seen him as either, so it goes a long way what he did. And Yamamoto, I said this going into the matchup last night in Game 2, another cat and mouse game. Let's see what comes out of it. If you look at some of his stats, his O swing percentage, or outside of the zone swing percentage, 38.2% in the postseason going into last night. That's probably higher now if we update it, but that was fourth best. He wants you to swing out of the zone. And then this is interesting. I want to put this to bed right now. A lot of people have just kind of mislabeled Toronto's offense as disciplined. They're not really super disciplined. In fact, they swing out of the zone quite a bit. Their O swing percentage, the amount of times they swing outside of the zone at pitches outside of the zone, 35.6%, which was fourth worst, quote unquote, if you will, in the postseason. So it's not like they're not swinging at anything outside of the zone. The thing is, they're really good at making contact against those pitches. O contact percentage is 69.7%, which is way ahead of the field in the postseason. So all this stuff, and there's more to this, but I was just really interested to see, all right, one of these got to give tonight, which one's it's going to be. And for a while, it was back and forth. You know, Gausman was keeping them in the game, and I know you want to shout him out and give him some love, but eventually Yamamoto just kept on going and retired at one point, I believe 20 in a row or something like that. The Blue Jays just couldn't do much with what he was throwing up there. Had some good strikeout stuff, but the contact was pretty weak. And game 2 went to the Dodgers. There's a lot left to be said in this series. I think game 3, which we'll get to in a little bit, is super interesting as far as what the pitching matchup ends up being. But to go back to game 1 before we kind of keep on fast forwarding, any thoughts on game 1?
Yeah, for sure. I think we want to talk about the moment, and it's all about moments. And I think everyone will remember the 6th inning and went down there. Blake Snell, we talked about the postseason ERA. He entered game 1 a 0.86 postseason ERA, and we talked about controlling the tempo. He was pushed in the first inning, 29 pitches, and even though Toronto didn't score, they set the pace and really exposed the cracks early. They were fouling off fastballs. You mentioned frustrating him. They were laying off the slider just below the zone and showing they were not going to chase. They were not going to be aggressive out of the zone. And it was the kind of pressure, in my opinion, that doesn't show up in the box score until it breaks the game open hours later. And that to me was important to really set the tone that Blake Snell was not going to have an easy night. He wasn't going to face the minimum. The Blue Jays were going to make him work. And by the time the 6th inning arrived, I think that paid off. Snell's velocity dipped. The command started to falter, and Toronto went to work. It started small. We got the walk, a single, another walk, but every pitch felt like it was about to break Blake Snell. Then you get Emmett Sheehan entering from the bullpen, trying to stop the bleeding, and the Blue Jays did not back off. They pounced Addison Barger, making his first World Series plate appearance, got a 2-1 fastball over the middle, crushed it to the right field seats for a grand slam, which again was the first pinch hit grand slam in World Series history. Rogers Center erupted and awesome. And the important part about that, because we know the Dodgers offense does not, and if you give them an inch, they'll take it. They didn't stop there. Kirk followed with a 2-run home run off of Anthony Banda. And then earlier in the 4th, Dalton Varsho had already changed the momentum with a 2-run blast that erased Los Angeles' early lead. So this was an important inning. And the fact that they were able to hang a crooked number, a 9-run frame, which is the 3rd largest inning in World Series history, I think that really flipped the script of what the expectation was in this series, setting the tone in the game 1, saying that they can hang. And the Dodgers, what they've done all postseason, we mentioned in the preview, no adversity. They kind of walked all the way through unopposed. This was a team that was built on controlling the innings, and it fell out of control. They limited base runners all up to this point, and they couldn't get the quick outs. And in my opinion, Dodgers couldn't catch their breath. And I think you mentioned Toronto's intentional approach. I mean, they did not chase Snell's breaking stuff. And I think that first inning set the tone for the whole night. And then the offense went away. And we got to give a shout out to Trey Savage in that spot. You talk about heart rate, and you mentioned the pressure, the balls on John Schneider to put this rookie, who started in Double-A this year, Single-A, right? It was Single-A that he started this year.
Single-A, yeah.
For him to be on a World Series mound and go out there and did just enough to really put him in a spot and calm beyond his years. So shout out to him. He didn't dominate it. He was getting soft contact early in counts, and he bought enough time for the lineup to break through. So give him some approach. And then we saw the bullpen go to work after. So it's how you had folded it exactly how Toronto needed it to in game 1. And I think Los Angeles, of course, now they're the realization of like, oh man, this could slip away if we lose both games in Toronto, but we'll talk about game 2 in a second. Thought it was a perfect game 1 for the Blue Jays.
Yeah, I mean, you Savage a couple times. He clearly was not at his best and had a pretty high pitch count early, but there were a couple of situations where he really minimized the damage. The one that is in my head is you have bases loaded against Shohei Ohtani, and he gets him to ground out, I believe, to first base, and that was huge. Probably let him take a deep breath. So like did enough without his best stuff, kept him in the game. And it's interesting, man. I love looking at the pitch usage. All the talk about Savage is splitter, splitter, splitter. His splitter is so filthy. Didn't throw his splitter nearly as much as you thought he would. And then in game 2, Yamamoto threw splitters all over the place for the first 4 or 5 innings, really upping his usage. I don't know where it fell at the end of the game. Might have come back down to his normal like 25% or so, but he was using the splitter a lot in game 2. But yeah, for Savage, I mean, it's got to be confidence building because he's going to have to throw again if this series goes long enough. And you hope he has the confidence to go out there, and maybe we see him use the splitter a little more the second time around. It seems like it's almost been every other start for him where he kind of spams the splitter, and those are usually the better starts. But I get it; you don't want to become completely predictable. So maybe there was some game plan in there. Shout out to Alejandro Kirk too, known not only for his good bat, not only for his amazing 2-strike batting average that he had this year, but also for stealing strikes, framing pitches, which maybe next year with the ABS challenge system is a thing of the past or a little less important. But he was stealing some strikes for Savage and some of the bullpen guys too. I put up a video on Twitter, kind of slowing it down so you could see him really move the glove. He is smooth with it, man. And that's one of those things that maybe not the casual fan is going to talk about too much. Can be a big advantage for one side if you have it. But I agree with you. I liked seeing Savage out there, even though he didn't go super deep. I thought the bullpen was really good too. They gave up the 2-run homer to Ohtani, but other than that, the bullpen did its job and it never got close. To go to Snell, though, I will say this. There's no part of me that thinks all because he wasn't fantastic against him in game 1. There's no part of me that thinks, oh, he's going to have the same outcome the next time he pitches in this series. I could very well see him come out and be fantastic and go 7 or 8 the next time we see him in this series. Because, again, it's greatness against greatness, and it can go either way depending on the night. But yeah, game 1 was, I mean, especially after seeing game 2 in hindsight now, just almost a must win for Toronto. Now knowing what we know now is clear that it was a must win. But I think a split is okay for Toronto going to LA. Do you think there's momentum here, or do you think it's just like, okay, 1-1, let's go?
No, I think for both of them, they would sign up for a 1-1. Now we have a 5-game series to determine best, 3 of 5 at this point. You have to get there and do it. I mean, if you go down and you go to LA down 2-0, I think we wouldn't have the excitement for the series. And again, I think both teams wanted this. If you're looking at just ritualistically of a World Series format, you want to grab one as the road team. And for the Blue Jays, playing against this powerhouse Dodger team that has been there, done that type of thing, they wanted to prove they can hang with them. And I think it was important for it to be game 1. Because I think if Blake Snell went out and dominated, and then you have Yamamoto, who was coming off a complete game, who knows how it shifts, and fallacy, the predetermined outcome type of stuff. But the other stat of game 1 was just speaking about the efficiency of the pitching staff, whether it be the bullpen or, I mean, lack thereof, because we know how efficient the actual rotation was. They had thrown 177 pitches to get through 8 innings, which is just kind of puts in perspective how good they've been, but they really struggled here. And then Toronto's hitters really never stopped working counts and never let the game speed up, and they never gave the Dodgers a clean inning to reset. So it was the war of attrition that they paid off. And you mentioned not overpowering them. They outlasted them and they drained their energy. And I just like that what they do here. You mentioned them being strategically aggressive. They're not as careful with the pitches as people want to angle them as. Yes, there's contact driven. Even the most disciplined teams, I think this formula does work against them to frustrate them. You said before the series that if Toronto could make them uncomfortable and force them to reach into their bullpen early, their entire framework would start to crumble. And I wouldn't say it crumbled. Game 1, of course, did. But the prediction, that lands pitch perfect with me. I think that's exactly what happened here. But it was a tone-setting night for them, and Rogers Center was unglued from the moment on. It was a giant party in Toronto.
No doubt. And it's just interesting, though, because like game 1 ends, and if you're rooting for the Blue Jays, you're like, oh, man, hell yeah. Like, we already got into this Dodger bullpen. Like, now let's just keep on piling on. And then Yamamoto does what Yamamoto does and goes complete game. And all right, you've now seen 4 guys from the Dodgers bullpen in 2 games. It was all in game 1, but if you're the Dodgers, I don't think you're exactly mad at that, right? You saw Sheehan briefly. And by the way, I want to say this about Emmett Sheehan. I strongly believe if Emmett Sheehan stays healthy, in like 3 years from now, we could be talking about him as a top 25 pitcher in the league. He's got great stuff. He's 25 years old, I believe. He's still got time to figure it out. was brought up a couple years ago, got hurt, pretty long-term injury, came back. I know he's coming out of the bullpen now, but that's just because of all the guys the Dodgers have. Hopefully he has a chance eventually, maybe as soon as next year, or maybe that's unlikely with all the guys they have, but to be a full-time guy in that rotation. Bringing him out of the bullpen, bases loaded, what was it? No outs, I think. Like absolute pressure cooker in that game. Yeah, and makes a couple mistake pitches, and the Blue Jays, as good as they are, make him pay. But so they see Sheehan, Banda, Wroblewski, who was actually one of the better performances that night, and Klein. Again, they haven't seen their biggest weapons out of there. And so overall, I don't think you're too mad if you're the Dodgers going back home, just showing those four guys. Going into game 2, man, I mean, we got that pitcher's duel I think we wanted. All the talk, the announcer said it a million times, was Kevin Gausman. All right, he just likes to go 5 2/3, right? Smoltzy, like he likes to go 5 2/3. He goes 5 2/3 every playoffs. Well, he shut him up real quick. But with that being said, in I guess it was it the 6th or 7th inning, I believe, makes a couple mistakes, especially the one to Will Smith. That is a mistake pitch. And I mean, if you pitch deep enough into a game, you're likely going to have a few mistakes, if not more. And you just hope that the other team misses those mistakes. If you watch a full game of a guy pitching somewhere around 100 pitches, if you watch pitch for pitch, you are very rarely going to see 0 mistake pitches from these dudes, even the best. And unfortunately, Will Smith was on it, man. He punished him, and then he gives up another one to Muncy opposite field, which was impressive power from Muncy. But overall, Gausman, you got to like what you saw from him. It's a shame he gets stuck on the losing end there. But again, goes back to Yamamoto's greatness. Looking back at it now, you savage game 1, Gausman game 2. Are you okay with it? Or in hindsight, do you wish that they flip-flopped?
No, I'm okay with it. I think it shows the moxie of John Schneider. It was a different approach, and I think them going with Scherzer in game 3 is interesting, especially since he didn't make the postseason roster in the championship series. I guess you have the experience of being in the World Series before that may lend itself. So it's definitely a creative approach, and maybe he feels like there has to be creativity to capture lightning in a bottle against this Dodgers team. Maybe John Snyder likes what he's seen out of Scherzer in bullpen stints, or just, what we saw, the fiery emotion we saw during the championship series where he wanted to kick his ass off the mound when he tried to take him out. There's something there about experience and turning back the clock. And I could totally see Scherzer turning back the clock. He's not going to take no for an answer. This is a guy who's been a gamer. He's been there. This might be his last shot to be in this moment to maybe capture another ring. I saw the picture of him and Kershaw standing next to each other in their game uniforms. One of these legends, Hall of Fame careers, will add another ring to their resume. It's going to be one of them. And, chances are both these guys are going to go in the Hall of Fame around the same time. Kershaw retiring this year. I can't imagine Scherzer's pitching that much further into the future. These guys are definitely going to be there at the end. But let's talk about Gausman, because we mentioned Yamamoto, and I think we'll talk a little bit more about him. The 105 pitches, 73 strikes, 17 swings and misses. At one point, he just dominant. Very first pitch, the outer edge to George Springer set the tone for the night. But Kevin Gausman was matching Yamamoto pitch for pitch. And 6 innings, this guy went out there. He's sitting around 95 miles per hour with his fastball. The splitter was tumbling late, which was really great. Yamamoto was alternating between the pinpoint heaters at the top of the zone. And through 6 innings, the only run came from a George Springer sacrifice fly. So scoring after that hit, after Yamamoto's very first pitch of the game, was really the only hint of imperfection of the whole night. And then in the 7th, you mentioned all of it before. Gausman at that point had retired 17 straight batters facing Will Smith. He guessed right on the fastball. And I can't help but look at the poetry that is baseball. That ball landed exactly where Joe Carter's walk-off home run landed in 1993. And people are showing highlights back-to-back of it. Toronto right now, of course, they look at that and say, okay, we need to get back on the board, figure it out. Then Muncy followed with another solo blast to nearly the same location, 2 pitches. The game flipped. And then obviously the Rogers Center, so loud, came alive. And I wouldn't say it fell into stunned silence, but they took him out of the game. And that was a big part of Toronto's whole approach, was a dizzying offense plus the crowd being into it, and just shows the poise of this Dodgers team. And we watched just how motionless Yamamoto felt. Like he wasn't even breathing on the mound. This guy just went out there and just felt like he was a robot, just an efficient robot that was built for baseball. I don't know, man. The Dodgers bullpen never stirred. Not one reliever even picked up the baseball. And just Yamamoto, what he did. Of course, we talked about Gausman, how good he was. Yamamoto was great, man. This guy was so good. the mentality and just the authority he had on that mound. Like, you have to appreciate when you're seeing it in real time, because this is rare. We don't see this. And it's not just like, oh, they let him go, like we saw with Crochet in the wild card round, giving him 115, 20 pitches. No, this guy went out there and 105 pitches, like nothing. Went out there like nothing, no sweat on his back. So crushed it. And I mean, how could you be mad at that as a baseball fan?
I was going to say, how can you hate this dude? Not only how great he was, but he's taking paper and pencil notes in between innings, literally. And then after the game, it was reported he just threw a World Series complete game. He cleaned the entire dugout. He did not go into the locker room until every piece of garbage was picked up from the dugout at the Rogers Center, the Dodgers dugout. Like, this dude is class. And not to mention another note on this, Derek Jeter, not to kill him, but post-game analyst, obviously, for Fox Baseball, after game one, an impressive Blue Jays performance, he said, listen, Yoshinobu Yamamoto on the mound for game two threw a complete game last time out. He's not going to throw a complete game tomorrow night. And obviously now that's on freezing cold, bad takes or whatever it is. Yeah, I mean, he'd admit it. I didn't think Yamamoto was going complete game either. Someone asked me on Twitter after I posted kind of the breakdown of the interesting cat and mouse between Yamamoto and the Blue Jays offense of what, using that data, what would I guess would happen in game two? And my answer back was, not trying to guess too much, but I said it could go either way. But what I would guess if I had to is both pitchers will go relatively deep in the game. Yamamoto will outlast Gausman a little bit, but it'll come down to the bullpens as far as who wins the game. I was almost right, but Yamamoto took the whole bullpen out of it for me. So he's just unbelievable. But Gausman was great too. Again, a couple mistakes. That's what happens in the duels like that, man. Those pitcher duels, which we love to see. Eventually, one person makes the mistake, and that makes the difference. Kevin Gausman was the one who blinked. Yamamoto never did. And just to go back, you mentioned the Joe Carter comparison. I saw another really cool comparison after game one. Our friends at Baseball Unstitched had an idea, and I actually think they said this a few days before the Barger home run, to give him full credit here, that his home run swing reminded them of Johnny Damon. They put side-to-side clips of a Barger home run, and specifically, if you remember 2004, if you're old enough, like we are, when the Boston Red Sox came back from down 3-0 against the Yankees, they win 3 in a row, and then game 7, all right, Yanks still could save this series. Game 7, the Red Sox came out and absolutely just blitzed them right away. If you remember that, it might have been a grand slam by Johnny Damon or early leadoff home run, something like that, where it's just a tank shot at Yankee Stadium, way gone. It's that swing, and they're right. Barger's swing, especially on home runs, looks very similar to when Damon would pop one of those big ones out of there. So I thought that was a cool comparison too. But all this being said, man, it is 1-1. You, during our preview, our World Series preview, said you're going Dodgers in 7. I said I'm going Blue Jays in 7. Before we preview Scherzer versus Glasnow, and maybe even touch upon Bieber versus Shohei, do you want to change your guess at all?
I do not. I mean, this is me holding firm. Dodgers in 7. They were going to face some adversity. The first adversity they faced all in this 2025 postseason. And I stand by that with conviction. I think game 1 was a gut check that every contender has to face. It just shows the Blue Jays have every right to be there. This was never going to be easy for the Dodgers all the way through. Game 2 is a response that championship teams deliver. The Dodgers didn't panic. They were outplayed in the opener. They admitted that. And Yamamoto went out there, pitched with history. And it wasn't just about the numbers. I mean, the entire foundation of this World Series is built around these bullpens, and you did not have to dive into the weakest part of the Dodgers' whole roster. And watching what we're able to see from Yamamoto, and now we're looking at, we mentioned Glasnow being a part of this whole plan, Shohei Ohtani, and then Scherzer coming out for game 3. I think now the rotation has aligned to plan. I think there's a lot to say about what this Dodger team can bring to the table going forward. So I'm really excited about where this series is going to go, and I'm hoping it goes 7. I'm hoping that we have an ability to have a masterful moment. I'm hoping we even get, we mentioned Scherzer for the Blue Jays. I would like to have a Kershaw moment in this World Series too, somewhere down the line, if that's possible.
I've already heard some people predicting like if the Dodgers win this series, it's going to be Kershaw closing it out. Who knows? Things have to line. You can't just plan that. Things have to line up. But to go back to predictions, I will also hold firm to my 7-game prediction. But for me, it's with the Blue Jays coming out on top. I don't think we've necessarily learned anything new through these first 2 games. I think we've seen both teams' strengths. We've seen both teams' weaknesses. We've seen greatness from different people on both sides. And we'll see what happens in game 3. With that being said, game 3, I think some people were surprised. Many people were surprised. I know I was to see Max Scherzer over Shane Bieber named the game 3 starter, similar to how people were surprised with Savage in game 1. I will be honest here. I love what I saw from Mad Max in his last start out. We touched upon it before, almost biting John Schneider's head off when he tried to take him out. With all that being said, this one makes me really nervous. If there's a game that I'm worried about a Dodgers blowout of the Blue Jays, it's this one. I will go on record here. I would be shocked to see Scherzer get through 5. That I'd be very, very surprised to see him get through 5. So I think the bullpen is going to have to do some legitimate work if he can just keep it close. Because to me, I'll be honest, without even looking at numbers, I'm not super confident in Tyler Glasnow against the Blue Jays either. We'll look at the numbers and break down their history at some point as well. But just eye test and what I've seen from these guys this year, Scherzer, I know there's always the chance, the adrenaline, he turns back the clock. And man, how fun would that be if he goes deep into this game and is dominant? That would be so fun. But I just don't see it happening. And Glasnow, I wouldn't be surprised if he struggles to get through the 6. Maybe I have a little more faith in him getting a little deeper than Scherzer. But Scherzer, for years now, since he was on my Mets, I mean, that first year with the Mets, he was still great and then kind of lost it in the playoffs when they got eliminated pretty early by the Padres. And then the next year really didn't have it. And the nagging injuries started kind of in the rotation for a couple months, out of the rotation for a couple months. Every once in a while would mix in a fantastic start, like, oh, there he is. And then also mix in a real clunker. If you look at September for him, it was very, very rough. These are his 4 starts in September. Against the Yankees, 4 1/3, 4 runs, 3 hits, struck out 8. Okay, strikeouts are there. Against Baltimore, 5 innings, 2 runs, 4 hits, not bad. 5 Ks. Then it starts falling apart a little bit against KC. The Blue Jays lost this game 20-1. Didn't get through the first inning. 2/3 of an inning pitch, 7 earned runs on 7 hits, 1 walk, 2 strikeouts. And then against Boston in September, 5 innings pitched, 4 runs, 10 hits, 5 Ks, no walks. Now, obviously, he then did not pitch again until October 16th against Seattle, where he went 5 2/3, 2 earned runs, 3 hits, 5 strikeouts. Saw a little bit of the old Max. So maybe we get that gritty version of Max Scherzer tomorrow night. I'm just saying this one makes me very, very nervous. Maybe all that rest in between September 24th and October 16th, and now from October 16th till now, maybe that's good for a guy like him. For other pitchers, all that rest is a bad thing. It throws them out of their rhythm. But are you with me here? Does this one make you nervous for the Blue Jays, or are you feeling good after what you saw with him against Seattle?
No, it makes me nervous for sure. I think there is, I love the belief in a pitcher that's a veteran that can turn back the clock. We see it in other sports where the moment the person will step up. You look at the career numbers versus the Dodgers. Scherzer has 18 appearances versus this team. Of course, played with them for a little bit, but 5-5 with an ERA at 2.34 with 114 strikeouts. But the caveat is I'm not sure how much that matters. I mean, this history goes back to 2008. Yeah. I mean, this is a completely different Dodger team. He's a completely different pitcher. And the only way that this works is if he brings the emotional fortitude to the beginning of the game. If we're expecting him to be relied on in a big way, I'd have those arms in the bullpen very warmed up and ready to go. Scherzer might be this emotional boost in the beginning of the game, but the first sign of trouble, I pull him right out because you mentioned those blowups. That's what happens with Max Scherzer at this point. I'm not saying it's a dead arm, but it's a different pitcher. I mean, we see some of the velocity is up when he's feeling himself in big moments. We saw him pitching in the championship series and be able to go out there and do his thing. But this is not the Scherzer of old. It's not the Scherzer that won the World Series with the Nationals. This is a guy that is a veteran. We get the same conversation about Kershaw. We love these guys, Hall of Fame plaques. It's all waiting for them, but they're not the same pitchers. This is a young man's game. So you have to admit because that's the complicated part. Him barking at John Snyder and it works out, that's fun. That's sentimental. But when it doesn't work out and maybe, it goes wrong, you have the Matt Harvey situation with Terry Collins and like you leave him in too long. I mean, you mentioned
Gotta
Johnny
bring
Damon.
that one up.
You mentioned Johnny Damon in game 7, dude. Come on.
Fair. 1-1. We're tied.
So
my bad.
If that happens and it goes wrong, like Scherzer has to know his limit, and John Schneider has to be okay with or an early hook and leaning on this bullpen for arms that are there. He can't be like, okay, I'm scared of Scherzer out there. I'm not saying he is, but like there's a moment, there's this like belief in your stomach that you see him on the mound in the uniform. He looks like he could still be the guy. Don't be lulled into this false sense of security. Like the Dodgers could beat him around pretty bad. So, and even the thing is too, we talk about the pitching being a big deal. And I was thinking about this when you have the announced starting pitchers. It's not all about that. I think both these offenses are prolific enough to go out there and make it about the offense, not about the starting pitching. Yamamoto made it about pitching. Galvin made it about pitching. But there may be a game in this World Series that is just about offense and just being the last team standing.
Well, that's what I think is fun about this. So we had game 1, Blue Jays offense ends up rolling that crazy inning. Game 2, the story is Yamamoto and the pitching overall, much better game 2 for both sides. Game 3, like you said, very well could be the offense game where it's just back and forth. Who can outslug the other? I think about that game. What was it? I believe one of the games in the Dodgers Astros World Series where it's just like every time you thought someone hit a like a knockout punch, the other team would do it back. And I think there was a game similar to that with Houston and the Nationals too. But the Dodgers Astros one, which is just back and forth, dude, like big hits, big home runs, back and forth. We can see that
in the juice ball argument. I would like to show this to the bring it to the jury and show the game against the Dodgers and the Astros as the reason why this ball is juiced.
But what worries me about Scherzer the most is the Dodgers right now feel a little bit like a home run or nothing team. And I don't think of them like that, not for the entire year. But even you look at last night, I mean, what puts them over the top is 2 home runs in the same inning, solo shots, Will Smith and Max Muncy. That wins them the game. I know they tacked on after that, but that changed the entire game. So they feel a little bit home run or nothing right now, which should be a good thing for the Blue Jays. But Scherzer gives up a lot of home runs nowadays. 19 home runs in 85 innings in the regular season, 5.19 ERA. Gave up a home run in Seattle as well. So 20 home runs on the year in just over 90 innings total. That's not the greatest ratio there. Now, you mentioned all that history against the Dodgers going back to 2008. You got to look at the current players, but you also got to look at the recent history that he did face them in LA August 8th. So not all that long ago. And he had a very, very nice start. Blue Jays managers and fans would be thrilled if he could repeat this. 6 innings pitched, 2 earned runs on 6 hits, did give up a home run, 3 walks, 5 strikeouts. I mean, you would take that every single day. He ended up getting the loss in a game that the Dodgers end up winning 5-1. But man, I would take a quality start like that from Max Scherzer in a heartbeat. If you look at his the numbers of the current Dodgers on the roster against him, overall, they're cumulatively hitting 221. Nothing crazy. But again, a lot of that is from years ago. I mean, you got Freddie Freeman on there with 55 at bats. How many of those at bats do you think were as an Atlanta Brave against Scherzer as a National? A lot of them.
89% of them.
Yeah, and then the only other guys with 20 or more at bats is Muncy, who's 4 for 20 against him. Does have a home run. Miguel Rojas, 9 for 37. Again, a lot of those at bats are probably from a long time ago when he was a Marlin, I believe, right? Tommy Edman, 6 for 16 with a home run. Freeman in those 55 at bats is 3 home runs, 17 strikeouts. So a little bit, both of them have gotten each other a little bit. Mookie Betts, 3 for 10. I'm with you, though. I don't think this is going to tell us a whole lot for what we expect tomorrow night. But with that being said, Tyler Glasnow is on the hill on the other side. Similar to Scherzer, even obviously much younger. But it's interesting because there's a similar dynamic with Tyler Glasnow. I just said Scherzer's the kind of pitcher now where he's in the rotation for a little while. He's out with an injury for a little while. He's in the rotation for a little while. He's out with an injury for a little while. When he's in the rotation, can have some really good starts, can have a couple blowups. Glasnow is kind of a younger version of the current Max Scherzer. Now, when he's dominant, he's more dominant than this version of Scherzer, this version. But he's another guy that I don't exactly trust. Maybe it's my experience this year with him on my fantasy team. That could be it because, again, he's had some really good starts as of late. But if it's tough to call him the weak link of those four pitchers, Snell, Yamamoto, Glasnow, Shohei. But if you had to pick one, I think he's the weak link. Even if you're just going by how deep can you get into a game, we saw he went 5 2/3, I believe, in his start in the Milwaukee series. But I this is the kind of pitcher I feel like this current iteration of the Blue Jays can get to. How do you feel about Glass now in Game 3?
I feel the same way about him, and I was just thinking about him as we were previewing or just putting the notes together for the show of trying to figure out who he is as a pitcher. We can see the greatness, we see flashes of it, what the Rays traded away, and like all those things. I don't know if he's fully realized who that guy is. We see flashes, but maybe it's the injury piece, and that's not fair to judge. But I don't think he's fully the pitcher that everyone expected him to be. And it kind of shows what the expectations were. They were sky high when he was coming up, and watching him really develop those pitches and go out there and be the guy that the Rays thought they were going to build their rotation around. And then when you kind of get him on the pennies on the dollar because of the fact his injuries and the Dodgers are able to have him in that rotation, we see glimpses. But you're right. There's not a consistent trust I have in him that he's going to go out there and be this guy. And I guess that just speaks to the embarrassment of riches of this Dodgers rotation, that they have a guy that would be the ace in most rotations, if we're being honest. And he's number 4. And we mentioned all the other, the shortcomings of a Glass now. We've seen in this postseason what he can do when he's right. So, but I would fully imagine if I had to circle one game in these pitching matchups, if we really want to put the emphasis on starting pitching, this might be the game that's offense heavy. And can they go blow for each other? We saw the Blue Jays offense go off. There will be a game where the Dodgers offense just absolutely blitzes them. I fully expect a route in their direction one of these games. I'm not sure if that's this game. We might see a blow for blow game where you might have the final score be 10-7, 11-8, something like that, because of just it gets out of control quickly. I would not expect if Scherzer blows up in the first inning or Glasnow blows up that we're going to sit here and say, oh, game's over. Like, I don't feel that way about either one of these pitchers.
I'm with you. I think we're in lockstep here. And one thing I like on the Blue Jays side here in this matchup against him is if you look at his game log, most of the time he's going to walk around 3 guys, sometimes 2, sometimes 4, but let's put the average around 3. And the Blue Jays are in this mode. Again, I know they got shut down in Game 2, but they're in this mode now where they're punishing pitchers for putting guys on. So you look for that early. If Glasnow is struggling with the strike zone a little bit, let's see if the Blue Jays can get a couple early on him. Now, I will say, like, looking at the splits, most of bad Glasnow was in April when maybe he was already hurt, because then he was out for a while. He was out until July. 6.23 ERA in April and 13 innings pitched. I gave up 9 earned runs in 13 innings, 4 home runs in that month in 13 innings. So, like, he was bad in April, then was gone until July. July 2.45, August 3.45, September 2.49. He's been very, very good in the playoffs. He pitched against Toronto in that same series, Dodgers Blue Jays, that I referenced for Scherzer on a different day, that early August series. So he pitched against Toronto August 10th, and it was a pretty good start. There's that 5 2/3 number for him. He did walk 4 guys, but struck out 8. Only gave up 2 runs on 4 hits. So they didn't necessarily punish him too much with those, even though there was 4 walks there. But again, I feel like the October version of Toronto is better than any of these, September, August, whatever you want to look at. I know Blue Jays did have some hot streaks this year, but I don't know. I just think they're fully realized right now. If Glasnow is playing around with 4 walks, I don't see that going well for him here. But again, similar to what we said about Scherzer in the start he had earlier against LA this year, if I'm the Dodgers, I fully take that start again, 5 2/3, 2 runs on 4 hits, and say, all right, I think we're good. Because if I had to bet, are the Dodgers going to get more than 2 runs on Scherzer? I would guess the over for sure. And then it comes down to bullpens for the last 3 or 4 innings.
Yeah, and I think looking at the way both these bullpens are constructed, we talked about that in the preview. We see you mentioned the high leverage arms not being used for the Dodgers quite yet. There is emphasis on this, and it's interesting how Dave Roberts will play this. How many games are must win? And it sounds silly because it's the World Series, but I think the Dodgers and everyone on the roster is confident that if they were to go down 2-1, that they could come back in this series because of just how much they've been there. And that speaks to the experience that we have on the docket for this Dodgers team. And I think the advantage, if this game becomes a bullpen game in Game 3, because Scherzer is not able to go the length, and Glass now starts walking the ballpark, as you mentioned, and the Blue Jays make his life a living hell. I would put the advantage on the Blue Jays because of the fact that if you're putting the emphasis on some of these arms, you mentioned the unfamiliarity of, yeah, they haven't seen some of these guys. But I would say history has shown us that this Dodger bullpen, when they're tested early, does not go well. And bringing my point to whatever we were talking about with Glass down his regular season numbers, are we approaching the point where it's just time to throw out regular season numbers for the Dodgers at all? Like, are we just approaching this rarefied air that they live in where they just become different animals in the postseason? Kike Hernandez point in case, but there's so many of these guys that are example of they turn back the clock. It doesn't matter. Max Muncy's launching balls. Is there something to be said about this team approaching where it doesn't matter once the October air hits that uniform and they step on the field? Are they just a different team for some reason?
Well, I don't know, because their offense is not exactly torn it up, to be honest. Yet, like even they said, like they asked Muncy and some others about like this after sweeping the Brewers, do you think this layoff is going to hurt you? And his answer was interesting. He said, "Listen, it's not like any of us are like red hot offensively, so I don't think it's going to hurt us."
Isn't that the scary part though? They're winning games and they
yes,
really, yeah.
Yes, definitely. I see that point for sure. But there is something to that with the Dodgers. There was a post about this somewhere. I'm blanking on it on Twitter about how they handle injury. Oh, it was Joe Kelly. His Baseball is Not Boring, his podcast, where he openly said, he's like, here's the difference between the Dodgers and a lot of other organizations. When the Dodgers put you on the IL, they really say like, listen, man, don't rush. Like we want you healthy for the playoffs. So like take your time. Now, not every team has that luxury of being like, we're going to make the playoffs. It's fine. Like just chill out and we want you in the postseason. But he openly admitted that's what they do. And which, I mean, there's borderline of like roster manipulation. Billy Epler got in big trouble when he was with the Mets, or maybe after the fact, for like manipulating the IL, which by the way, still confuses me because I feel like every team has done that forever. Of like putting a guy on an IL just needs like a rest and like a mental break sometimes or something like that. But anyway,
that's a sport thing. I mean, NBA does that for sure.
Yeah, but anyway, I think if they wanted to, they could find 30 guys a year to suspend or fine for doing stuff like that. But it was interesting to hear someone with playing experience on the Dodgers say, yeah, and you get hurt, they just basically say, take your time and make sure you're ready for the postseason. So there is that. I mean, at any time, they could get hot. Aside from that one monstrous Ohtani game, which I know it sounds crazy to say aside from that, but seriously, take that game away. And like, what has he done offensively? I know he hit the home run in the blowout to cut the lead from 11-2 to 11-4. Okay. But like, even guys like Freddie Freeman, a lot of these guys have not gotten hot yet. And at any moment, we saw Freddie Freeman last postseason carried that LA team at times and had so many big moments. So at any time, these guys can get hot. Another interesting point, to go back to game one for a second, the Blue Jays in game one kind of carried over something they did against the Mariners, where their 6 through 9 hitters were just so much better than the opposing team's 6 through 9. I'm trying to find the numbers quickly. I have it here somewhere. That obviously didn't happen. Here it is. Didn't happen in game two, but Toronto in game one, their 6 through 9 hitters were 4 for 14, a home run, 5 RBIs, 4 runs, 2 walks, and 3 Ks. The Dodgers 6 through 9 were 3 for 15, which is not all that much different than 4 for 14. But the other numbers, only 1 RBI, only 1 run scored, walked 1 time, and struck out 8 times. So we haven't in this series seen like the playoff Kike Hernandez or stuff like that. The 6 through 9, the bottom of the lineup has not contributed as much. But you're right. At any point, the Dodgers lineup can just go on fire. I will say, if you make me choose who is game 3 more important for, I think without a doubt in my mind, it is the Blue Jays. If the Blue Jays lose game 3, I think they're in a little bit of trouble. With Shohei on the mound in game 4, yeah, you got Bieber, but Bieber is shown to be a little shaky early in games, has struggled to get kind of deep into playoff games. You're already going to more than likely, you're going to have to use a lot of bullpen in game 3 to kind of aid Scherzer. So that makes me, I know I said Blue Jays in 7 and I'll stick to it, but if they lose game 3, then ask me again. I think I'd start to be a little worried that things are starting to go in a direction where it could be over sooner than I thought.
Yeah, that speaks to the experience we were mentioning before, where adversity, yes, the Dodgers haven't faced that much of it during this postseason, but they have been there. They have reached the heights that you've been there. And once you've done it, it's just re-walking that path. We talk about repeat champions. Yes, it's hard to repeat, but you're building these calluses to weather these storms. And this is the first time for most of these Blue Jays players that have been there. And yeah, you can lean on the experience of a Max Scherzer because he's done it and going down 2-1 and having to play a long series, because this is not a best of 5, obviously. Best of 7 is a completely different animal, where if you go down 2-1, it's not the end of the world. But I do agree with you. There is a momentum switch, especially as we shift over to Los Angeles, which, that's the other piece of this that we haven't really discussed. I mean, we've alluded to it. Obviously, Toronto was a raucous crowd. They were so hostile in the most positive way in support of their team. The Dodgers play well at home, but I don't believe it's because of the Dodger fans and the atmosphere they create. I just believe it's because the Dodgers are a great championship caliber team. That being said, I'm not sure the ballpark's going to play a huge difference. I mean, you can look at the numbers and compare the analytics of what would be a home run and the quality of air, et cetera, of that. But I don't know if the Dodger fans make a huge difference for the Dodgers. And I know Dodger fans out there probably screaming at their phone or their screen or whatever. But I just believe that the Toronto fans, and maybe it's because the spoiled nature of these fans, because, I mean, even watch how subdued they were in celebration of getting there. There's something about winning that once you've done it, there's a breakthrough of it. And you can even see the way how subdued the celebration was when the Dodgers won the pennant. But I don't believe Dodger Stadium is going to be as raucous because, again, how many of these games have they seen at this point? I believe it's just going to be the Blue Jays and the Dodgers determining this on the field. And I do believe Toronto's fans gave them an edge in game 1 and game 2. It just didn't happen for Yamamoto. I think they play a part in a big way throughout this postseason. I don't think Dodger fans do that, though.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you there. I mean, I think the Dodgers are just super comfortable in front of their home fans, their family, things like that. I mean, how can you not be comfortable in that atmosphere in LA if that's your home? But I don't necessarily think I mean, I know the Blue Jays are a very, very good home team. They're a better home team than a road team. But I agree with you. I think this is going to, whatever field you're playing on, the talent is going to kind of determine the outcome at this point in the season. With that being said, I do like to look at those splits for the pitching matchups. There's a part of me that thinks, man, Max Scherzer in front of LA, like a team he used to be a part of, like, man, he's going to be foaming at the mouth. He was really bad on the road this year, though. 5.91 ERA on the road, as opposed to Tyler Glasnow, who really, really good, much better pitcher at home. 11 games started at home, 2.77 ERA compared to 4.08 on the road. So he likes to pitch in front of the home crowd. We saw Yamamoto, who likes to pitch in front of the road crowd, just unbelievable on the road all season long. So they have this whole thing scheduled where these guys do better. That's no accident by any means. So we'll see. I think tomorrow is definitely more important for the Blue Jays. That's what I'd say. This is an unpredictable series in my mind. I think anyone who is sitting there saying, I know exactly what's going to happen now is a little bit out of their mind. But there's a lot of people like that out there.
So my question to you before we move on to some of the other news, and we do got breaking news about the Baltimore Orioles and their managerial vacancy. We'll talk about that, where Jeff Passan bombed atomically once again. We have the conversation about decisions these managers make on and off the field, lineup adjustments. Do you feel like this is a knee-jerk reaction that feels like it could backfire, similar to the Trey Savage thing, which did actually work out for them, to have Scherzer, again, who was not rostered in the championship series, to be so pivotal in this series? Like, what has changed? Do you believe that they have to have some open book, that they feel like he has an edge, that he's unlocked something? Or is this just an emotional response from John Snyder trying to capture lightning in a bottle because they have to?
That's a tough question, man. I would lean towards the second. I'd lean towards it's just a gut feeling by Schneider here. And that's it. I mean, you can't really look at numbers from what I've seen and think like this is going to be great. Listen, he was really good in that game against Seattle, but it wasn't like he shut them out for 7-8 innings, right? And the Dodgers are certainly a more consistent offensive team than the Mariners. So I don't know. I'm worried for sure. But before we go, I don't want to forget this. Before we go to the breaking news and some of the other tidbits, I wanted to ask you what you thought of this. I put a poll up, and I thought the results were really interesting. and this is kind of based on what we've seen in the postseason. The poll is, where can I find it here? I'll find it in a minute, but I know off the top of my head, it was out of these three pitchers, who do you think is going to have the best career long term? And it's three young guys that have made their mark in the postseason. So the choices are Jacob Mizorowski, Cam Schlittler, Trey Savage. If you had to pick one, this to me is one of the harder questions we've ever put up there, and the results kind of speak to that. But if it was you, who are you taking?
Yeah, so I did vote in that poll, and I did vote for Jacob Mizorowski just because the profile of the pitcher, and I just like long term watching him as a frontline ace. I'm not saying Schlittler and Savage can't be, but I just think the profile of the pitcher, just through every level of baseball, has shown that he has been a frontline starter, and I think we've seen flashes of that in portions of this season. And if I had to choose, it's a very hard choice. I think I'd be happy with any of the three starting a rotation with, but I think I would go with the Miz by a small margin.
Yeah, that's where I lean, even though he's the one guy who we didn't get to see start in the playoffs. And I mean, Schlittler was so good, throws strikes, goes deep, like limits hard contact. Savage, obviously, when he's on and that splitter's on, it's just looks untouchable. But I do lean towards Mizorowski too. The results were as close as they get. Savage 37%. Mizorowski actually came in last year, but not by a lot, 28%. And Schlittler got 35%. And I know some people yell at me when I put up these polls like, well, obviously that guy won because more of those fans follow you. I have more faith in our followers than that, being, trying to take their bias out of it, I hope, and not just blindly picking their guy. A lot of Met fans commented and said Nolan McLean should be here, and we're writing in Nolan McLean, which as a Met fan, I agree. He is definitely in the same conversation as those three guys. The reason he was not a choice in the poll was because, unfortunately, he did not get to make his mark in the playoffs. I was thinking of guys that have been in the postseason this year in that category. So that's why McLean was absent from that poll.
Yeah, it just speaks to the strength of the young starting pitching. That is, like you mentioned, these four guys, but I think we can name 25 of them right now off the top of our heads that we believe that we'd be confident that they are exciting to watch, that they will be a competitive frontline starter, or at least maybe a number 2 or 3 somewhere down the line. That's how it speaks to the strength of these development systems of how they're getting these pitchers ready for Major League Baseball. But speaking of Major League Baseball, Jeff Passan, as I mentioned on Twitter, just dropped at 9:47 p.m., so about 15 minutes or so ago, that the Baltimore Orioles are finalizing a deal to hire Craig Albernaz as a manager. Sources tell ESPN Albernaz is 42 years old. He was previously the associate manager with Cleveland, and according to a lot of sources, he was widely sought after candidate for the open jobs on the market. And of course, he's trying to rewrite the ship that went 75 and 87 for the underwhelming Baltimore Orioles. So are you surprised by this? Did you hear this name out there, 42 years old? Guy that has experience with Cleveland. I did hear his name buzzed out there, but this is not the Kurt Suzuki. This is not the Tony Vitelli thing that we're going to be talking about. This is a name that kind of is a safe pick for the Orioles.
Sure, I guess. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I know all the ins and outs of this. I will say, out of all the managerial searches, I feel like I've heard the least about the Baltimore one. I feel like it's been relatively quiet. Again, that just might be the people and the places that I follow. Maybe there was a lot of noise, but I feel like we've heard a lot about the Giants, which, like you mentioned, with the Vitello stuff, which we're going to talk about. Heard a little bit of whispers about the Braves, places like that. Obviously, the Angels getting clowned for the 1 year deal for Kurt Suzuki. Sorry. But yeah, I'm not. This is a name I'm going to have to look into a little bit more. But it does bring me to a question that I said maybe we could talk about a little bit briefly on here. So the Blue Jays finished in last place last year in the American League East. So it got me to thinking, if there's any team that could be the 2026 Blue Jays, as in finish last this year, and all of a sudden, not maybe we don't have to say they're going to make the World Series, but they're going to be a first place caliber team next year potentially. Who would it be? And here's the thing: this is a tough question because here's the pool that we can choose from: Baltimore Orioles, Chicago White Sox. That's who you're going to pick, right, Steve?
Yeah.
The Los Angeles Angels, the Washington Nationals, Pittsburgh Pirates, or the Colorado Rockies. So the Orioles with their new manager, is that who you're taking, or are you going somewhere else here?
I mean, the easy out is the Orioles. I mean, you believe that eventually it will shake the other way. The immense talent they have on that team, they feel like they're a frontline starter away from being that playoff team we all hope. Because I thought, a lot of people had them in the World Series this year. That being said, to be creative, I'd probably go with the Washington Nationals making the jump out of all those teams. I was very high on them coming out. They definitely disappointed. Young, playing, careless baseball at times this year. We saw James Wood fall into some slumps, get really hot during the year. We saw a lot of bright spots for them. Of course, winning 66 games, not a lot to be happy if you're a DC fan, but there's a lot of young talent even coming through the system. If I had to say one team out of those teams, probably would go with the Orioles, but to be creative, I think the Washington Nationals in that same DMV area could be creatively and make a run. I mean, getting to the World Series is such a high jump, but I mean, if you would have told us this time last year that Toronto did it, I think we would have been like, no way.
Dude, I put that clip up, I think maybe the day after they made the World Series that had us talking to Mike Wilner in like episode 19 of Table Setters. I think it was our first interview. He agreed to come on with us. Shout out to him for like thinking back to that. He agreed to come on when, you know, I had a camera where you could barely see me. I think about that a lot. Like what a nice guy to come on and talk with us, the two schmoes back then. But anyway, we were talking to him about like who deserves to get fired. John Schneider, Ross Atkins, like Shapiro, like who deserves to be fired. And now here we are and they're in the World Series. But yeah, so those 6 teams, not an easy choice. I'm not going Nationals. I just think that division is going to be too tough. I do think there's a chance that they're much more aggressive in free agency this year because this year kind of showed them they can't just do it with all the young talent. They're going to need to supplement that in a few different ways. But I'll go with the boring choice and say the Orioles. And it's not just because they have that young, talented offense. It's also because the pitching, it's been so bad, but people forget they do have some pieces coming back. Kyle Bradish, who we saw at the end of the season, like we forget he was really good, almost top tier kind of guy before he had the injury. And then he, tried to figure out how to keep on pitching, eventually goes and gets the surgery, out for a long time. So you got Bradish, hopefully for a full season if he stays healthy. You hope you can get the same Trevor Rogers that we saw for basically the second half of 2025. All of a sudden, you're looking like, all right, if we can also like sign or trade for one solid pitcher as well, like we might be able to be competitive here if the offense lives up to its hype. With that being said, if I had to pick an NL team, I don't believe this, but like I'd go with the Pirates because again, if they can sign any offense, and then they have that pitching hopefully be healthy together with Skeens and Jared Jones and Bubba Chandler and so on. There's other guys too that you could name in there. Super talented, and maybe they even trade from that pool of talent to add some offense. Who knows? I think we're probably living in dream world here, but if you force me to pick one of those National League teams, I'm certainly not going Rockies. I do not believe in the Nationals yet. Their front office is going to have to show me something before I step into that bucket. But yeah, I think overall out of the 6, I think most likely they're all very unlikely. I don't think we're going to see that jump again, but Orioles should have the best shot.
I mean, the Orioles kind of fit in that mold. We're looking at the Blue Jays 2024 last place season. They won 74 games, and the Pirates not far off that mark of 71 games. There'd be a lot of baseball that has to go right for the Pittsburgh Pirates for them to be here in this spot in the World Series. But as you mentioned, when Paul Skeens is there and Jared Jones is there, and you have these other young pitchers throughout the system, and maybe Connor Griffin plays a part of this next year, there's a lot to be excited for in Pittsburgh. But you need this ownership, Bob Nutting and the gang over there, to spend some money and invest. And we know how that goes. But there's a lot of good and hopeful dreams for these baseball teams. I think these markets are desperate for winners. The Colorado Rockies of the world, like hopefully we see some improvement, winning 43 games this year, losing 119 games, an absolute brutal season for them. There is room for improvement. When you watch a team like the Blue Jays of maybe them getting to the World Series, and everyone wants to talk about the Dodgers ruining baseball, but let's use the optimistic side of view of glass half full. Maybe the Toronto Blue Jays making a worst to first run of getting to the World Series, potentially winning it, strike some inspiration in this ownership group and everywhere, Pittsburgh and maybe DC gets out there and spends some more money and gets the hope of saying this could be us next year. It's not too far out of reach. And Toronto's doing it in a really tough division too. Yes, it took a lot to break right for them, but they built this team. This is a team that was carefully constructed and invested in. And they were, they knocked on some doors trying to give money to players, and they didn't take it, and they didn't give up. They had every right to say, we're not signing anybody. But they gave the money to George Springer a couple of years ago. They invested in this team. They invested in coaches. They invested in the infrastructure of the scouting and everything that's gone into this World Series appearance. And I think that it has to be inspiring to the other franchise. And if it's not, get the hell out of baseball. Like if this doesn't inspire you to watch this team do what they do, you should not be involved in the front office. Like this what it all should be about is doing exactly what the Blue Jays are doing from 2024 and to where they're at right now.
Yeah, not to mention, like, what was the first thing the Blue Jays did this year? They got Vladdy to sign long term, $500 million deal. So if the Orioles looking at that as a model, dude, get one of these kids signed long term. I've been saying this for a while, man. Like the new ownership could have won these fans over very quickly, even with not signing free agent. If they could have, like, all right, Corbin Burns gets away. We tried to keep him, but you know what? We're going to take some of that money that we tried to keep him, and we're going to get Gunnar Henderson to sign 10 years here, kind of like Bobby Witt and KC. The fact that hasn't happened is really weird. I know people talk about Adley Rutschman now. I think a lot of people think Rushman's gone. I don't say I know they did the thing with Samuel Basallo. I get that. But, like, he's been here for 5 minutes. Gunnar Henderson has kind of proved himself. I believe very much in Basallo for sure. But Henderson is the shortstop there. Like, get this dude signed long term, and maybe a momentum of a good feeling like that takes you to some unexpected success.
Yeah, and if you believe in the law of averages, everything that could have went wrong last year has gone wrong. So 2026 feels like just by the weight swinging the other direction that the boat has to shift in a direction where the Orioles walk their way into 90 wins next year somehow. I mean, for them to lose 87 games with that roster, we mentioned the injuries and everything that went down, but that's a team that underperformed. And in a world of underperformers, they continue to just dip below the line and no one took the next step. So even Gunnar Henderson, who is, as you mentioned, well-deserving of a Bobby Witt Jr. type of contract, didn't perform to his best capability, but that should incentivize you to go out there and maybe sign him on a quote-unquote down year. Even though Gunnar had a year that people would be proud of, he could still
it was down
play.
Year. It was definitely
He could play better. You know what I mean? Like that's what we're all saying. Like sign him now.
Yeah.
Like
you're
still going to pay him, but use the Bobby Witt archetype as a small market team. Kansas City got it done. Why can't you? Why can't Baltimore do it?
Yeah, I'd be interested to know if it's ever really been, like, seriously brought forward, if they've had serious discussions. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Gunnar and his agent are very much of the mindset already of, like, I'm the type of guy who wants to get to free agency. Nothing against Baltimore. There could be that. Like, there are some things we're not privy to. I'm not going to sit here and act like Steve and I know everything that goes on behind the scenes. But I don't know. I haven't heard that many whispers that they're really trying all that hard to do that. But we're going to talk about a couple other little topics here before we say goodbye and wait for game 3 here. I'm interested in this. I didn't realize that there was more to this story until you and I were chatting just before we came on of the Bryce Harper stuff. So about a week and a half ago, Dave Dombrowski has his end of the season press conference, talked about a lot of things, but the one that made headlines kind of unexpectedly, because you thought the headlines would be about bringing Schwarber back or something along those lines. Nick Castellanos probably going to try to move him. Can Ranger Suarez be re-signed? All that stuff. But no, it's this line in his press conference of saying, like, Bryce Harper did not have an elite season. He had a good season. And I don't know at 33 years old if he's ever going to get to that elite status again. I then saw Dombrowski on a show. I'm trying to think of what show it was. Maybe it was Foul Territory. Anyway, he basically tried to walk it back a little bit and say, listen, I think Bryce Harper is elite. And then he pointed to some other guys like Miguel Cabrera in his time in Detroit, where, like, he hit a certain age and he was still very good, but never got back to that elite status, but really tried to walk it back. But you told me something that I did not realize. I did not realize Bryce Harper responded to this at all. So I have the article. I'm going to kind of read along as you tell everybody kind of what you know he said about this.
Yeah, I've been following this closely because if you're on Yankee Twitter, any sniff of Bryce Harper to the Yankees makes people go into a frenzy. So Bryce Harper came out, and obviously you mentioned the elite form comment that Dave Dombrowski made. And Bryce Harper went to The Athletic and had an official statement. He said, quote, "I have given my all to Philly from the start. Now there is trade talk. I made every effort to avoid this. It's all I heard in DC. I hated it. It makes me feel uncomfortable."
Wow.
Dombrowski even doubled down. He said, the elite form thing, but he also called him a quality player. And that feels to me derogatory towards a guy. Obviously, Harper, you mentioned his age being 33. He's coming off the injury-shortened season, 844 OPS, his lowest since 2016. The NLDS, he was pretty damn quiet. But Bryce Harper, we talk about the loyalty and the buy-in into the city and the effort he puts in on a daily basis. He talked about the position switch and really the quick return from injury that he made as proof of commitment to this team. Dombrowski has since denied any trade discussion, saying that, quote, that couldn't be further from the truth. We love him. He's a very important part of our team. But this took a turn where it didn't have to. Everyone was upset in Philly land that you go out there and you lose the way you did, Orion Kirkering, and everyone's tough because this whole core you mentioned, Kyle Schwarber, on and on, all these pieces that will not be there next year, maybe, maybe not. It won't be the same. For you to go and throw salt on the wound of a Bryce Harper, who's a guy like, and again, it's hard to sit here and go rah-rah for a multimillionaire, but he's a guy who has been a loyal soldier for that Philadelphia clubhouse, doing everything they ask of him, never is a diva superstar, speaking up on the player's behalf. For him to even come out and say this after the fact makes me feel like there is a huge issue that's brewing under the surface that has to be resolved. And we know Bryce Harper speaks his mind. We heard what he did to Rob Manfred. I'm sure he made a call to Dave Dombrowski and made him make him walk it back. But the damage might be done. And listen, man, if he's open for the trade market, I mean, I could see a lot of teams being use of his service, even if he's quote unquote not elite, according to Dave Dombrowski.
This is like wild to me. Rarely do you see a superstar be so open in a response like this. I mean, we've mentioned a few times on this podcast over the years. We've seen like Derek Jeter and Brian Cashman kind of fight things out in the media a couple times back in the day, even a little bit with Aaron Judge as well. Dombrowski, when he first said this, I mean, everyone kind of pointed to like, all right, he's doing this for a reason, whether it's motivation or something. There's something to it. You don't just kind of let that slip out. It's got to be measured. This is what I was referring to before when asked about the trade rumors by Foul Territory. So it was Foul Territory. Dombrowski said that couldn't be further from the truth. We love him. We think he's a great player. He's a very important part of our team. I've seen him have better years. I look for him to have better years. So kind of walking it back. But like when you hear Bryce Harper saying there's trade rumors, I'm hearing trade rumors. That makes me feel like he's legitimizing that there's at least some thought about that. And it's not just people, looking for baseball topics as there's only 2 teams left now and we want to talk about other things. Yeah, those comments, man, that you read and I'm reading them in front of me too, like pretty strong. And he's right. He has committed to the city that he signed with more than any free agent signing I've ever seen. Like wearing all the Philly stuff, the Philly fanatic stuff, the cleats, and it's constant. He has acted like he's fallen in love, but when you see this and he's about halfway through the contract, you start to think maybe there is a world where he doesn't finish as a Philly. It's wild to think. Dombrowski, in that interview, I also heard him say, like, they asked him about Suarez and all that stuff and Schwarber. He made it sound like Schwarber was the bigger priority and Suarez they love, but he doesn't think he basically said he doesn't think he's going to be able to re-sign everyone. Obviously, Harrison Bader's another guy. So that we've alluded to it. The Phillies off seasons can be fascinating, but I'll ask you this because you're the Yankee fan here. Ever since this Bryce Harper thing came out, there's been Yankee fans just putting a mock trade out there, reacting pretty strongly to it. And to me, as the outsider, surprisingly one way. Most people are saying it. So the whole thing is, would you trade Ben Rice for Bryce Harper? And if a Philly fan is listening to this, I would think they're spitting out their drink. Like, what? Like a 1-for-1? But a lot of Yankee fans are being like, absolutely not. I wish we signed Bryce Harper when he was a free agent, but now he's older. I wouldn't trade the younger guy for the older guy. Give me your thought. Not that this is a legit possibility. I just want to make sure everyone listening knows that this is just like Twitter fodder for the most point. But as the Yankee fan, Ben Rice, Bryce Harper, in an alternate universe, if that offer was actually legitimate, would you pull the trigger?
Yes, absolutely. If it's just
okay,
Ben
thank
Rice,
you.
like 1-for-1. I mean, I love Ben Rice and what he does, the multi-position, fallen in love with him this year. But if we're being honest, what is the ceiling of a Ben Rice? You'd hope it's a 34-year-old, Bryce Harper. That's exactly what you're hoping for him. Bryce Harper, we're talking about a Hall of Fame caliber player. Change of scenery would be, who knows? We saw what it did for him leaving DC to go to Philly. He'd be motivated to shove it up everybody's ass if he was to be kind of pushed out of Philly to prove them wrong. Maybe that's Dombrowski's approach here to try to motivate him. But as we know, we've seen that he can be a little bit prickly when it comes to these things where You rub him the wrong way, he's going to push back in the media. And sometimes it does get swept under the rug. Like you mentioned, the Stanton and Cashman thing, that was a non-issue this year. Adults will be adults, and they moved on from it. But the problem here in Philly is you mentioned the core breaking apart. And I don't think they're ever going to go through a full rebuild or a tear down, anything like that. But this team's going to look way different next year. And we mentioned the window closing. It doesn't mean that they can't open another window, but it might be some time before they're able to crack it open like it was this year. It was right there in front of them to potentially win a World Series. That's why everyone was so heartbroken around this organization that was involved on this team, because they realized that the chance, maybe the hourglass has run out. But I believe in the way this team has been constructed. They put resources in this team. We talk about ownership, buying into winning on the field and all that. You got to give Philly credit. They've done that time and time again. They've built winners, but it's not going to look the same way. And I think there will be regression next year. And the question is, does Bryce want to be a part of that? Maybe he's questioning, do I want to be a part of a retool? I don't think they're going to do it on the fly as always.
Yeah.
If they lose Schwarber, I can see them being obviously a force to be reckoned with, but it's not going to be like it was this year. This year, as many as other teams you want to compare it, this was win or bust, and they weren't able to get it done this year, and that's why everyone's so sad about it.
Yeah, it seems like a very similar ending to the endings they've seen the last couple of years, where it's just all of a sudden like wah wah, like all this hype and nothing. But I'll just end it with this: like if I'm a Philly fan, which I am very much not, but if I was, I would be sitting there thinking, I hope Dombrowski knows what he's doing here, because there is a very thin line between doing something to like get under a player's skin a little bit that results in like motivation, chip on shoulder, and just goes out there and crushes it and works insanely hard in the offseason. There's a thin line between that and like hissing the guy off where he like doesn't really want to play for you anymore. And when you hear him say like it's disappointing to hear and just really hurt, you may have missed the mark if you were going for motivation.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think that's a guy you do not want to make upset, because again, he has made a lot of accommodations for the team, for lack of a better word, shifting the position, finding ways to make it accountable. And yes, he's getting paid millions of dollars, and yeah, boo-hoo for the millionaire, but he's been a team player. He doesn't have to be. He's Bryce Harper. This is a guy who's been in the spotlight since he's 11 years old. It's a guy who has been an absolute soldier for the city and has been meaningful on and off the field. We talk about the on-field production, the OPS this year, and elite or non-elite. I would go walk around Citizens Bank Park and see who has his name on the back of their jersey. A lot of people are wearing Bryce Harper merchandise there.
Yeah, dude. I mean, that's a rough one. It's that's something to watch, man. Not something I thought we'd be watching. It was not on my radar, but it certainly is now. This just popped up on my screen, and it makes me want to go just very quickly back to the whole, like, will the LA crowd be a factor or not? The one thing that you may see them a little more riled up than usual, because who's coming back to town? Mr. George Springer, who we will see early in Game 3. So you'll know how into it that crowd will be, because if it is not crazy loud boos when Springer makes his first at bat, then I'm going to be like, what are we doing here? We can't fill the ballpark. Like, you can't get to your seat before the first pitch, and you can't boo George Springer in Game 3 of the World Series. So we'll watch for that. I think it'll be loud for that situation.
So we're going to finish up with the story about Tony Vitello. We alluded to it last week. The rumors were out there, worst kept secret out there, but he has officially made the leap from Tennessee to the San Francisco Giants. So they did some media with this where he admitted that this was the hardest decision of his life, but also believes it's the right one. He is now the official new manager of the San Francisco Giants, becoming the first person to ever jump directly from college baseball to a major league managerial role. And the quote was, this was to reporters, quote, "It was selfish, but it was personal reasons." He said this to the Knoxville News Sentinel. "I've always tried to be a good teammate, but I feel like I made a selfish decision that was one I needed to make. It was the right decision." He also talked about the media frenzy surrounding the hire and that the process put everyone in a whirlwind. And he's like unhappy that this happened to them as they prepare for furthering their own program in Tennessee. But he also talked about the gratitude he feels towards not only the program that he helped build, but its fans. We talked about his resume, 341 and 131 record, 3 men's college World Series appearances, and the 2024 national championship. And he said, quote, "If that is the last time I ever step foot on this campus or this field as a Vol, I'm just so thankful for the people that showed up." So they're getting a good one in San Francisco. This might set the trend for the future of what we see with managers. We talked about that We saw the Los Angeles Angels, Anaheim go with the old tried and true catcher, personality hire type of thing, 1-year deal, which was odd. Yes.
1 year.
Yeah,
1 year deal. 1 year deal.
But I believe that this has more than just, okay, will it work for the Giants? If this works, it's a copycat league. We'll see a lot of this, especially where we see the jump of major league players and being developed and equivalent of these programs feeling like major league ready programs. We might see the equivalent of Tony Vitello, and who knows? We talked about the other resumes that are out there making the jump and getting paid big money, and it might be a breeding ground.
Yeah, man, I've already said I love this. I'm glad it got done. I mean, I would pay big money to see Tony Vitello getting in like Dave Roberts' face next year, Giants Dodgers rivalry back. I'm hoping. Listen, he has been so successful because he has been the guy he is, if that makes sense. Like, do not change yourself for this new gig. I'm optimistic. It comes down to the players on the field. So Tony Vitello is just not going to magically turn the Giants from like a very 500 middling team to automatic playoff team. So they still have to figure out the personnel. They've been relatively aggressive with it. By the way, I thought it was funny. I guess in his letter to the team, he said something along the lines of like, as of now, you've probably heard that I took a job to babysit Drew Gilbert as a member of the San Francisco Giants, former Tennessee Vol, very close to Vitello, obviously. But it'd be cool to see those two back together. But anyway, I think the interesting thing now, obviously, I hope for all the success in the world, because I think it would be cool if this becomes a little more of a trend, adds a new wrinkle into the manager hiring process. But I think what most baseball fans in the know are looking now, the biggest criticism of Vitello is like, listen, he doesn't have any major league managing or coaching experience at all. He should have been like a bench coach or something like this, field coordinator, something else before he ends up sitting in the captain's chair. So the important thing now is, who is the bench coach? It's got to be someone with experience here for those situations where Vitello has not experienced certain things before, and maybe things that he doesn't even realize he has not experienced before. So there's an article here from Around the Foghorn, San Francisco article, naming 3 candidates. Interesting names. 2 of them stick out to me. Jace Tingler, former San Diego Padres manager, is a name that's been mentioned out there. He's fired after 2021 at a record of 116 and 106 over 2 seasons for the Padres. Okay. And then the other one really caught my eye, Brandon Hyde. We just talked about the Orioles. Listen, not that long ago that Brandon Hyde was manager of the year in the American League. And then obviously lack of playoff success and disappointing year, and he's gone. But a guy that has valuable experience, I don't mind that name either. I'm sure there's 10 to 20 to 30 other names that we could think of there for someone that could come sit beside Vitello and be kind of a calming presence. But that's what I'm looking for next. Who do they bring in here to be the bench coach? And it's interesting because you want that experience, but you don't want Vitello feeling like he has to look over his shoulder, like, is this guy going to replace me if I have a bad first season or something like that?
Yeah, no, I think that there's a lot of conversations that have happened to understand that he's going to get a lot of leash for this, where clearly the Giants have done nothing but be mediocre for the last how many years? The record 81 and 81 and continuing to just middle around. They have to take a home run swing, and there will probably be bumps in the road, as you mentioned, some of the things he's never faced, but he is going to be a quote unquote superstar manager. And it's very rare that we have that, being the face of the team. And Rafi Devers is there, of course, but there's going to be a lot of people that are getting behind him as a celebrity is a strong word, but like there'll be fanfare for him where there's not that much for managers of the past, unless they've kind of made their bones on the field in a big way for that franchise. So there's going to be a lot of pressure on him in that way, where it's going to be unique for him. And I'm sure he can handle it. He took a program that, we talked about what he did on the field in NCAA, but this is a completely different animal. But I fully expect that he was well vetted, and shout out to the Giants for being innovative and progressive in the way they're thinking about this, instead of just taking this recycled approach of like, let's just get a catcher, a former guy. Buster Posey's doing things a little bit differently. You got to give him credit for that.
Yeah, I should mention that Tingler, mentioned as a possible candidate, was actually Rocco Baldelli's bench coach. And I'm unsure if they've actually informed him. I'm guessing if he's the bench coach for Baldelli and Baldelli was fired, I highly doubt Tingler is going to still be there unless they want to, promote him. But we don't know. Minnesota's still looking for manager. One of the, I think, 5 or 6 teams left that still have an opening there. And we should also mention that Tennessee actually named Vitello's replacement, I believe either today or yesterday. And he was one of the associate coaches, Josh Elander. Really cool moment if you haven't seen it. Even if you're not a college baseball fan, you can go on our Twitter. I think I reposted it, of the moment the players found out who the new manager was. Obviously, the guy they wanted to get the job got the job, and they went absolutely ballistic. I can't imagine a better feeling for a guy having the crowd, not the crowd, but the room of players explode for him when he was announced as manager. Pretty cool moment. So go check that out. And that was not a given. It wasn't a given that like the guy next to Vitello was going to get the job. They were bringing in some pretty big candidates, including Kevin Schnall from Coastal Carolina, who just signed an extension with Coastal Carolina after going to the finals of the College World Series. I believe the extension was to 2030, and all of a sudden, Coastal Carolina fans were panicking because his name was in the news as like he interviewed on Friday. But I think apparently he pulled his name out of the running to stay with Coastal, which I was happy to see. I that would have left a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth if he signed the extension there to 2030 and then immediately took more money somewhere else. But cool story in Tennessee, both sides. And Vitello made no bones about it. Like, he sees himself one day returning to Tennessee in some capacity, even if it's just living around the area. Like, he has a love affair with that place. So clearly a difficult decision for him to make. And again, I'll say, I hope this is something where this is not the last time we see this kind of move.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm hoping that we're looking at success through that lens and giving him the patience that a lot of baseball fans don't have. And I think the Giants fans are well versed in the success we've seen. Bruce Bochy, what he did, and that would have been, again, another approach. Like, could have just hired Bochy, but this
Bring him
is
back,
looking.
yeah.
This is for the progressive long term of the future. Before we move on, we have to kind of talk about this commissioner world tour that's been happening. Of course, all the focus in a negative way has been on the NBA with the stuff that happened with Terry Rozier and Damon Jones and the arrest of Chauncey Phillips and all the bullshit that's been going on with the gambling related scandals across professional sports. And again, this is related to baseball because we saw it bleed into it with Emmanuel Clase and Luis Ortiz flagged for suspicious micro bets earlier this year. Before game 2, Rob Manfred was speaking with the media and he said, quote, "Number one priorities is to protect the integrity of the game as the league continues to navigate the complex realities of legalized sports betting." He went into really saying, I mean, I gave credit to they did the game on Prime for the Knicks playing the Celtics, and Adam Silver, I gave him a lot of credit for getting on a live microphone and talking about this. Rob Manfred followed suit doing it during game 2 of the World Series. He said, quote, "We didn't ask to have legalized sports betting. It kind of came, and that's the environment in which we operate." He also talked about the reform that might require federal intervention. And he talked about some of the micro bets being banned potentially, because that is really the crux of what's happening, because allowing wagering on single pitch outcomes is where a lot of this money is being made and the pressure is being had. What's your concern level for sports in general of this betting thing? Are you just saying that this is the nature of how we're operating as a fan, or is this something deeper rooted? Because this NBA thing, I know we're not a basketball podcast, but there seems to be a tip of the iceberg situation with Rozier, Damon Jones, Chauncey Phillips, that if they can start looking back at old tape of pivotal moments, game 7s, finals, things like that, that were compromised because these guys were rostered for a long time. Terry Rozier was playing just this year, and apparently they had flagged him already. This is deep rooted, and I understand different leagues and all that, but if you take away the authenticity of sports, not just the betting side of things, but feeling like the fix is in, like this is sports entertainment, this is WWE, this is fixed, we're in a dangerous, slippery slope that, I mean, right now there's no going back. The money that's being made on betting is different, but how do we get ahead of this as baseball fans to do exactly what Manfred's doing, is protect the integrity of this game, which has to be paramount in this situation?
Well, there's a lot there, man. This story is way more than just Chauncey Billups and Terry Rozier, like you mentioned. This is, I mean, listen, we just had the Emmanuel Clase, Luis Ortiz situation, so it's not like baseball hasn't been touched by this, and it was touched by that before that. Obviously, people like to bring up the Shohei thing and be like, wait, how is this like a years-long investigation that just broke and Shohei took like a day and a half to clear him? I get it, man. Like, I don't want to go into that now, but the answer to your question is I think we officially have a big issue. I like to put a little bet down every once in a while. I was very excited when sports gambling became legalized and you could access it on, on your phone so easily in New York. But I got to be honest, man, we this is going to become like he alluded to, like a federal thing where they're going to have to take a look at this and decide if they want to continue with this, if they just want to make some smaller changes and regulate it a little more, or if they want to completely get rid of it. I've heard a lot of people say like this is going to be this generation's like big tobacco. And like I can't necessarily say I don't see the comparisons. Obviously very different type of health, but make no bones about it. Like this affects people's health in a lot of different ways, whether it be addiction or just like you see in the news all the time, players are getting like death threats because they didn't help someone hit a bet. Um, there's some situations here, and yes, it can affect the legitimacy of some of the sports we're watching, but I think it goes deeper into that. And the ads, I mean, we've said this before, are everywhere. LeBron James is doing DraftKings ads for the NBA. Like, you don't want to pull him aside and be like, maybe not. ESPN broke the story about Billups, and they have an ESPN bet thing right in the bottom right hand corner, and they quietly take it away off the bottom line as they're talking about the story, realizing like, oh, a little bit of a conflict of interest here. But it's over every single network, every single league. Tons of stars are doing it, and it does remind me a little bit of tobacco, where for a long time, if you're old enough, you can remember cigarette commercials and magazine ads everywhere. And then eventually they got rid of that stuff, saying it wasn't allowed. But Jeff Pearlman, who obviously longtime writer, has written a lot of books. He just actually, even though he's a sports writer, put out a book about Tupac, which apparently is fascinating. Put out this very long Instagram post about how much this pisses him off. And part of it really struck a chord with me, where he's like, as a sports fan, it's just like a shame that we can't just enjoy sports. And even big time real sports fans like myself, I will admit I've absolutely been affected by this, where it's not that I always have to have money on something. I don't bet that often, to be honest. I usually forget. When it first came out, I was doing it like every day, but now it's pretty rare that I put a bet on anything. But like even just the fantasy sports part of it, like when I was a kid, I could sit there every night and like watch the New York Rangers play a hockey game. I still have great memories of watching like Knicks Pacers, Knicks Bulls, and it was great theater. No fantasy, none of that. That didn't happen until we were like teenagers, again, to age ourselves a little bit. And now it's like I do sometimes find it hard to watch a random, say, football game that I don't have a fantasy player on or like a small bet on. If it's the Giants, my team, I can watch them without any of that stuff. Baseball is the one sport I could watch without any. I just love the game. I don't need fantasy. I not that I don't play fantasy baseball, I do, but I don't need it to watch a game. I don't need bets on it. But a lot of the other sports, I will say, like sometimes my interest wanes a little bit, and that just shows the effect it's had on our brain.
Yeah, and I think it has a lot to do with culturally where social media has taken us, the instant need of gratification that we get from Instagram Reels and TikTok, and generation that's grown up on iPads is like there is no patience. And that's why you're trying to thread the needle of baseball growing to appeal to the younger fan that doesn't, not to be derogatory, they don't have the attention span to endure what a
No,
baseball game entails. It has to be micro dose to them in a lot of ways. So it's going to be a story that we continue to cover. Unfortunately, it transcends all these other sports, and it has touched every sport. Shane Pinto in the NHL was letting someone use his platform, and eventually there has to be something that gets in the way of this, because as we mentioned, if the sanctity of the sport and the legitimacy is compromised, then you have nothing. And these championships and these games mean nothing. Yes, people are making money on it, but at the end of the day, these accomplishments, these resumes, it'll be a huge issue. And again, the NBA thing is ongoing and it's out of the NBA's hands. This is not an investigation that's happening in house. This is apparently a RICO's thing that's been happening for years, that they've been piecing together that there was mafia ties to these gambling games, of the poker games with the x-ray goggles and the under the table to read cards. If you have Hall of Fame level players, which we do, Chauncey Billups is a Hall of Famer, a current coach in the NBA, this is an insidious problem, and who knows
oh
how
yeah,
deep it goes. If you have a superstar, a guy who's been a crucial part of any of these leagues, if it's Kevin Durant, not throwing shade his way, but there's been some things people have been clipping, LeBron James, things like that, it could be catastrophic. We talked about the referee scandal 30 years ago at this point. it took the NBA a little bit to recover from that Sacramento Kings and the Lakers series. This is way worse than that. This is not even close to the level of the ref scandal. Was nothing close to the betting stuff where you're throwing games where Rozier is taking the under and affecting crucial games, and who knows who's getting in the ear. And you mentioned the threats and all that. It is a problem beyond problem. You have to be naive to ignore it. But before we leave, Manfred did talk about labor negotiations. He took the high road, saying, I'm kind of focused on who's going to win tonight. He would not talk about the 2026 CBA, which is on everybody's mind, especially ours. He did mention the 2028 Olympics, that he talked about MLB continues discussions about allowing players to compete in Los Angeles, though logistical challenges remain. He did talk about Tropicana Field, hoping it'll be ready for early next season. And of course, giving some love to Shohei Ohtani, saying that the Dodger star is the greatest benefit to the game that you can imagine. So, and he also talked about the improved with the expanded playoff, loving what it's brought to the table. And how could you not be happy with the ratings we've seen, the growth of the game in that way, all this good stuff. So, whether it's Gary Bettman, Adam Silver, Rob Manfred, these guys have to get on the front street and get on the same page about all of them as a united front against really just the legalized sports betting, getting in the way of what makes a good league in competitive sports.
Yeah, I think the more of these stories and the bigger the stories are and the dirtier it looks, the closer we're coming to what we might have some kind of reckoning here with whether legalized sports gambling can continue or not. And I know not all of this story is about the legalized sports gambling. I mean, this is like a poker thing, right? So like, and a mafia thing. So there's more than just like the DraftKings and FanDuel. It just brings that stuff to the forefront. But you know what we forgot to do, Steve? I feel bad about this. We were supposed to put a Jonas Brothers song right in the middle of the podcast. Do you think we can edit that in the beginning, like right
we
in the
should,
middle?
and right when the momentum gets going, where you're feeling the flow of the game or the conversation, we just put a
I'm
Jonas Brothers
so
song right in the
pissed.
middle.
Ah, man, that's a big
What's your
mistake
favorite
by
Jonas
us.
Brothers
Sorry,
song,
guys.
Devin? Do you have a favorite Jonas Brothers song?
I literally cannot think of one right now.
I have none as well. I honestly, they could walk past me in the street, I wouldn't know who they are. I mean, I have no idea. And maybe that speaks to my age. I have no. Maybe the Jonas Brothers from like our time. No, maybe a little bit further up. They're not current stars, are they? I don't have
Well,
no
who are
idea.
they? Are they supposed to be like? Who are they supposed to appeal to at this age? Because like when they first broke on the scene, I feel like they were like teenage girls were supposed to like them, but now they've been around for. Are they supposed to be like mainstream, like
I have no idea.
middle-aged people? I don't know.
I'm not a top 40 radio guy. Never have been. Never will be. And I mean, there are some guilty pleasures for sure, but the Jonas Brothers happen to not be one of them. So if you're
Right
out there,
in the middle,
if you
right
like
in
the
the middle of
Jonas
the show.
Brothers, maybe I'll put an outro with the Jonas Brothers songs if you want. I can
There you
probably
go.
edit that in if we want to, but
I think that
we
would be
appreciate
nice.
you guys hanging with us. Of course, we're all looking forward to games 3 and 4 and beyond in the series. We know we'll at least get a game 5. That's the guaranteed part. Hopefully we get a game 7. We'll be back here to discuss all the baseball and the offseason stories that will continue to develop. Who will manage the San Diego Padres? Where's Albert Pujols going? That's a developing story as well. Free agency, of course, will take the front street, but we're focused on competitive baseball, and the WBC is getting ready. So there's a lot of good stuff to look forward to as we finish up episode 113 here. But you can support our show by following us on Instagram and on X at TableSettersPod. You also subscribe to YouTube, which is doing really well over there. Thank you guys for shouting us out and watching on YouTube. We don't really give it a lot of love. So the fact that you guys are going and watching on YouTube is a really good thing. Really appreciate that. Just tell your friends about this. We just want to spread the love of baseball, continue to have conversations, collaborate with other people. Let us know what you think about the show. Leave a 5-star review if you can. It goes a really long way with the algorithm, helps us on Apple podcast lists and good pods, et cetera, et cetera. So if you can, that'd be very much appreciated. And if you want to save some money, Dugout Mugs, use code TS10 and save 10% on your order. Drink something cold out of a nice piece of a bat, which looks amazing.
Yeah, and I think they have some products coming for the holiday season. They had some Halloween stuff, and they have. I'm sure they'll have more. They're constantly updating their stuff, so good stuff over there. Last word for me, not a football show, but I'll end it on my part with this. Get well, Cam Scatterbo. Just devastating to watch.
Yeah, dude, that was nasty. Dislocated ankle. Shout out to Cam Scatterbo. I mean, you got to give some credit. Not that we're going to sit here and talk football, but what Jackson Dart and Cam Scatterbo did for the Giants in just a couple games turn I wouldn't say turn franchise success around, but they feel relevant and exciting where you want to, buy a jersey, go to a game, etc. So
yeah, it's just a shame, like losing neighbors early in the Dart, era, and now Scatterbo, and hopefully, my concern is I just hope he's okay for the future. Like that is some nasty looking stuff.
Yeah, as the Packers just took the lead early in the fourth quarter and against the returning Aaron Rodgers against them. Of course, they're in Pittsburgh tonight, but in those pitiful Pittsburgh Steelers jersey, what is that jersey that they're wearing?
Not great. Although on the other side of things, I know I said last word before, but the Denver Broncos old school orange crust they wear with blue helmets
are
beautiful. It's beautiful. I was always a John Elway fan as a kid before I really dedicated myself to the hometown Giants. I used to love that jersey as a kid, and I love it just as much as an adult.
It's beautiful. And maybe the Colorado Rockies get on the same page. They got beautiful uniforms too, but make the success transcend on the field of Coors Field. But we will be back soon talking all things baseball. Shout out to everybody that was watching live on Twitter and YouTube. It goes a very long way. We'll be back sooner than later, and we'll talk to you after a while. And as always, happy baseball.
In a year that has been so